Namanda, 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 Namanda.
Welcome to the Buddhist Church of Sacramento. You're here for a very special Jodo Shinshu service. Rejoice the ties, live the Nembutsu. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Ito, along with organist Daniel Nishikawa. And you know, we're gathered here for a celebration. All right, now I see some smiles out there. For the past year, people around the world have been celebrating our founder, Shinran Shonin, his 850th birthday, and the establishment of our Jodo Shinshu tradition 800 years ago. This morning, our Northern California temples have come together for this joint service, something that happens only once every 50 years. And so for some of us, it's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime occasion, right? Shinran, the founder of Shin Buddhism, he lived in a different time and place. And I doubt that he could even imagine this modern society that we live in today. But his teachings remain relevant today. And they can help each one of us become a better person. Participating in this morning's service, the Bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America, Reverend Marvin Harada. Our guest speaker, Reverend Dr. David Matsumoto, President of the Institute of Buddhist Studies. Reverend Candace Shibata from the Buddhist Church of Stockton and Walnut Grove Buddhist Church. Reverend Noritaka Imada from the Buddhist Church of Florin and Buddhist Church of Lodi. Reverend Yuki Sugahara, representing Placer Buddhist Church and serving as Rinban, head minister of the Buddhist Church of Sacramento. Also in attendance, Reverend Michael Endo, executive assistant to Bishop Harada, and thank you to minister's assistant Keith Kato for ringing the kancho, the bell ringing us to this morning's service. And now please put your hands together for Gasho. From our Jodo Shinshu tradition, Shinran's teachings arise from the Buddha Dharma. Its principles are meant to cross social lines, ethnic divisions, and national boundaries. He believed we were fellow practicers gathered together on the principle of non-discrimination and equality. Equality means difference, and difference means equality. Namo Amida Butsu.
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 Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.
Shinran Shonin wrote this major work. It's known as the Jodo Shinshu, and it laid the foundation for Jodo Shinshu 800 years ago. One of the things he wrote at length about is a concept called Shinjin, the true heart of the Buddha that we receive in our hearts and minds, Shinjin. Reverend Imada from the Lodi and Florin Buddhist churches shares the first words in Jodo Shinshu. Good morning to Reverend Imada.
Please join me in the reading of the beginning of the Jodo Shinshu. And if you can, please put your hands together and join me in Gasho. are hard to encounter, even in many lifetimes, is the decisive cause of birth, Amida's universal vow, hard to realize, even in myriads of kalpas, is pure Shinjin that is true and real. If you should come to realize this practice and Shinjin, rejoice at the conditions from the distant past that have brought it about. Namo Amitabha.
Namo Amitabha.
Namo Amitabha.
Namo Amitabha.
Namo Amitabha.
Namo Amitabha.
Namo
Namo
Amitabha.
Namo.
Thank you, Reverend Imada. Did you receive a program? Okay, it's okay to flip through it right now, get familiar with it. We'll also have the words on the monitor for you to follow. You are about to take part in a beautiful and memorable service. It's known as Shuso Sango Saho. That's Shuso Sango Saho. And it's translated as a service in praise of our founder. It includes traditional Japanese gagaku instruments, the organ, chanting, and singing. All right, a couple of instructions. I know we didn't rehearse. Okay, you'll be chanting Shoshinge, which laid out our Jodo Shinshu teaching. But this morning, you will be chanting Shoshinge to the melody of Junidai, which many of you are familiar with. Okay, I know you'll get it once we get there. When you hear the gatha, Ondoku-san, please stand and sing. Our bishop, Reverend Harada, will conduct a special ritual from that middle platform. It's called the Raiban, and you'll be able to see up close what is happening. Remember, this is something that only happens every 50 years. And now the bishop and our Northern California ministers will be leading us in a music service in praise of our founder.
来南無奇妙来極楽のけみだ如来楽のけみだ如来
Today, the members of the Northern California District of the Buddhist Churches of America gather to observe the joint service of the 850th anniversary of Shinran Shonin's birth and the 800th anniversary of the establishment of the Jodo Shinshu teachings. With deepest reverence, we express our gratitude to Shinran Shonin for propagating the teachings which enable Jodo Shinshu to be shared throughout the world. May we come to receive the light of the Dharma, the light of Namo Amida Butsu in our hearts and minds. And may we live with the spirit of Shinran Shonin's words. May the Buddha Dharma spread, and may the world be at peace.
異名無量寿如来南無不可思議光法蔵菩薩因異実在世自在を武将刀剣勝仏浄土院国土銀伝自然幕建立無常修正願長発慶右大偶勢五行四唯四小十十世名称門実法不法無量無変更無下無体公園の少女寛義知恵公不断難事無所公長日学校精進説一切群上無交渉本願名号少女号 院上等学初代涅槃非死滅道願成就如来正意公出世唯説弥陀本願会五辱悪事群上会お信如来行実言納発一年期愛心普段門の徳涅槃凡上逆法再営入如主信入会一密世主信仰上昇語異の水波無明暗頓内心臓死運無上不真実信心天非行義行不無無しげ妙無暗逆心謙虚大狂気即応超絶語悪臭一切全幕本無人門信如来具税願仏言古代小下者全人妙分なりけ弥陀仏本願念仏邪見教満なく修上信行十字人意難南中市南昔インド祭天使論月中華自治騎士こそ現代諸公聖書意妙如来本税をき釈迦如来両が戦一種五妙南天竺龍十大自主等世質の財派無権先絶大乗無情報召喚議事小安楽賢治難行六六信行異行指導楽億年弥陀仏本願次年即時入筆上唯の上昇如来語お法大悲具税音天神菩薩増論説奇妙無下光如来永寿たら見真実光線の頂戴誓願こういう本願力栄光移動群上昇一心金融苦毒大崩壊筆逆入大英収集徳試練下造世界
即生信用法生寺有本の人間人図入生寺恩寺おげ本師鈍乱両天使上古乱消防殺来三蔵る始終上京凡上宣行気楽法天神菩薩論中下報道因果見世願おげんねこゆたり少女心唯心人枠前門部新人ポー承知生じ即涅槃非死無量光明道小修上回復結同釈結晶道難所唯明浄土活入万全自力変言出円満特語感染症三不三神慶音言増末法滅道因一生増悪地偶税思案如外称名家全道独名仏所意公愛上三陽逆悪公明明語見因縁介入本願大智慧行者小樹今後心狂気一年総合用意大と逆三因即小法小市上楽原神公開一大教変気安養感日祭先祖出身反戦人法権移動小弁流極重悪人唯小物我薬剤非摂取中煩悩証言水不見大非無見上昇が本資源苦妙仏教連民全幕本部人新宗教書公編集戦弱本願具悪説現来生じ臨伝月決知義上位昇進即入弱上無意楽必知新人異能入愚教大事主子と上祭無変極上悪同族 should good shin yui ka shin shi ko so se十歩未尽世界の念仏の主情みそなわし摂取して捨てざれば阿弥陀と名付けたてまつる煩悩にまなこさえられて摂取の光明見ざれども大悲物浮きことなくて常に我が身を照らすなりナモアミダナモアミダ仏ナモアミダナモアミダ仏五濁悪世の我らこそ今後の信心ばかりにて長く生じを捨て果てて次年の浄土に至るなれ皆の本願信ずべし本願信ずる人は皆摂取不捨の利益にて無常覚をば悟るなりナモアミダナモアミダ仏ナモアミダナモアミダ仏皆の栄光を成就しておそ幻想二つなりこれらの栄光によりてこそ信行ともに得しむなれ弥陀大悲の誓願の深く親善人は皆寝ても覚めても隔てなくナモアミダ仏を唱べしナモアミダナモアミダ仏
Please stand.
ナモアミダナモアミダ仏ナモアミダナモアミ 弥陀仏ナモ阿弥陀ナモ阿弥陀仏ナモ阿弥陀ナモ阿弥陀仏ナモ阿弥陀ナモ阿弥陀仏如来大悲の音読は身をこぎしてもほずべし知識の音読も骨を砕きてもしゃすべしPlease join me in Gassho. Please put your palms together. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.
Well, thank you, everyone. How was it? Wasn't that nice, invigorating? I'm going to let you feel that a little bit longer. Don't you think it was a beautiful and moving service? You know, I was thinking of, Shinjin. Think about it, the true heart of the Buddha that we receive in our own hearts and minds. Well, now it's time for Oshoko. This is the offering of incense by representatives of our Northern California temples, Northern California district organizations, and the Buddhist Churches of America. Representing the Northern California District Council as its president, and the Northern California Buddhist Women's Association as its president, Peggy Yokobayashi. Representing the Northern California Dharma School Teachers League, Judy Yuki. Representing the Buddhist Churches of America, Darlene Bagshaw. And now to our temple representatives. Instead of calling the names alphabetically, we're going to do something different. We're going to go by mileage. At 49 miles to Sacramento, representing the Stockton Buddhist Church, Candy Hayashi. Marysville Buddhist Church, 41 miles to Sac, Con Kochi. Who's next? 36 miles to Sacramento. That would be Lodi Buddhist Church. Hannah Eggy. Walnut Grove Buddhist Temple, 29 miles, Holly Pauls. Who's next? How about Placer Buddhist Temple at 26 miles to Sac? Renee Yamashiro. Florin Buddhist Temple, 10 miles, Eric Fuji. Sacramento Buddhist Temple, Karen Adachi. And thank you to our Northern California district organizations, our 7 Northern California temples, and BCA, Buddhist Churches of America. As mentioned earlier, the basis of Shin Buddhism came from Shinran's writings, known as Jodo Shinshu. You will hear some of the final words in a passage read by Reverend Candace Shibata of the Stockton and Walnut Grove Buddhist Churches. Good morning to Reverend Candace.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Reverend Imada began with the reading of the preface to Jodo Shinshu, Shinran Shonin's major work. Today's chanting of Sho Shinge is an expression of Shinran Shonin's deep gratitude of Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion, and for the teachings of the 7 Pure Land Masters. I invite you to recite the following passage with me, which is from the postscript of the Jodo Shinshu. Please join me in Gassho. How joyous I am, my heart and mind being rooted in the Buddha ground of the universal vow, and my thoughts and feelings flowing within the Dharma ocean, which is beyond comprehension. I am deeply aware of the Tathagata's immense compassion, and I sincerely revere the benevolent care behind the Master's teaching activity. My joy grows even fuller, my gratitude and indebtedness ever more compelling. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandawats, 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 namandawats.
And thank you to Reverend Candace. Of course, many of you know Reverend Harada as Reverend Marv, a very good friend of ours. We are honored to have you, Reverend Harada, our Bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America, joining us and performing this beautiful service, these beautiful rituals for this joint celebration service. And we're excited to have you introduce this morning's Dharma talk by Reverend Dr. David Matsumoto. Good morning, Reverend Harada.
Morning, everyone. First of all, I just want to say how wonderful it is that you're conducting this special service for your whole district. Many of us, myself included, missed the special services in Japan. Some of you, I know, went all the way to attend that special service, but it's really wonderful to be able to hold it within our own districts and our own temples. So thank you very much, all the efforts of the ministers and members of the district for putting on this service today. Our guest speaker really needs no introduction to all of you since he started his ministerial career right here in Northern California district at the Stockton Buddhist Temple. He served at Stockton, then went on to serve at IBS full-time, then really took 2 full-time positions, being the minister at the Berkeley Temple and teaching at IBS. But in more recent years, he has become full-time at IBS and is now the president of the Institute of Buddhist Studies. He's one of my closest friends and colleagues in the ministry. We were in Japan together. I can honestly say Reverend David Matsumoto really studied hard in Japan. I studied a little, and I played pachinko. But it's evident what tremendous study can do, and Reverend Matsumoto is, I think, one of the most important teachers of Shin Buddhism in the English-speaking world. May we all listen to his wonderful Dharma message that he will be sharing with us today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Matsumoto from Millbrae, California, 76 miles. I think Bishop Harada has me beat, though. He's from Anaheim, California. How many miles did you drive over, Sensei? 400 miles. So he's the winner today, as he always is. Thank you very much for your very kind introduction, Bishop Harada. Thank you to all the ministers in the Northern California District, to all the members, all the temples, the organizations, for inviting me to take part in today's really very important event. Thank you very much to everyone here at the Buddhist Church of Sacramento for hosting this event. I think it's been probably at least a decade or so since I was last here. You've gotten very, very high tech in the meantime, and I'm very intimidated by all of this stuff going on, to be quite honest with you. But I'll do my best, and I want to share some thoughts with you, if I may, on this very, very important occasion of the 850th anniversary of Shinran Shonin's birth and the 800th anniversary of the establishment of Jodo Shinshu. So the title of my talk today is What Shinran Shonin Means to Me. And I'm trying to think if I got this thing. Okay, here we go. I have to push on. Okay. So today's joint celebration is indeed a very, very important one, and I think I'm really honored to be a part of that. As Bishop mentioned, many of you went to the big festivities in Japan, which took place at the Honganji, and I understand a number of districts here in the Buddhist Church of America have also hosted similar joint celebrations. It's very rare, as Sharon mentioned. This is something that comes to us really only every 50 years. I'm not going to be here in 50 years, and so I'm going to sort of take as much time as I can right now. Sorry about that, folks. It may be a 50-year Dharma talk. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, it's wonderful to be here, and I'm just so happy to be able to be a part of this very, very auspicious occasion. So the 850th anniversary of Shinran Shonin's birth, the 800th anniversary of the establishment of Jodo Shinshu. I think we're familiar with celebrating Shinran's birth. We do so every year with Gotane, but this is a very, very unique, special occasion to be able to celebrate the establishment of Jodo Shinshu. And it really means a number of things. In particular, it means the establishment of the Jodo Shinshu teaching, the teaching of the true essence of the Pure Land Way by Shinran Shonin, but also the establishment of the Jodo Shinshu tradition. And this is something that I think is even more important because through Shinran Shonin, through his life, his writings, his activities, through his religious heart and mind, something very significant happened. He encountered the primal vow of Amida Buddha, and that changed his life forever. It changed who he was and how he thought and how he approached life and how he approached other people in his life. And he shared that experience of embrace and awakening. He shared that with his followers during his lifetime. He shared it with his family. And now he shared it with all of us through his writings. And I think equally important, perhaps even more important, we are the recipients of that experience through the hearts and the minds and the lives of so many Nembutsu followers who are alive today, who are no longer alive, but have lived lives of Nembutsu. And through that Nembutsu history, we have been the recipients of this lineage so that we can, in a sense, meet Shinran Shonin. We can encounter Shinran Shonin. Even now in the 21st century here in Northern California, we can encounter him in his heart, his mind. We can encounter his religious experience through his words, but also through the hearts and minds of so many others as well. And this is what I'd like to talk about a little bit today, if I may. I want to start by talking about the life of Shinran, which I think everyone's familiar with. And this is something we learn over and over again, but on today's occasion, I think it's very important that at least we sort of take a look at his life in a brief way. So Shinran Shonin was born on May 21st, 1173, in the village of Hino, which is in the south of Kyoto. His father was Hino Arinori of the Hino clan. He served as a retainer to the Empress Dowager. His mother, we don't know a lot about. It's said, according to legend, her name was Kikonyo, a member of the Minamoto family. Shinran Shonin's name as a child was Matsu Wakamaro, and he grew up in a time of great unrest, great conflict, civil wars, natural disasters. And according to what we know of his life, he was separated from his parents at a very young age. And so, when he was 9 years old in 1881, he received ordination at the Shorenin Temple in Kyoto. The ordination, the Tokudo service was conducted by the temple master Jien, a very well-known Tendai priest. And according to legend, Shinran and his brothers were brought to Shorenin by their uncle, and it was late at night, and the head priest said, well, you know, it's kind of late, we'll have the Tokudo ceremony in the morning. But Shinran, as we'll find out throughout his whole life, was a person of great religious fervor and great aspiration. And it's so said, according to legend, that the young boy wrote a poem at night that goes something like this: cherry blossoms that we feel will last till tomorrow may well blow away in the night. And the Master Jien, having heard this poem, was so impressed by the young man, decided to conduct the Tokudo ceremony there and then. And so Shinran Shonin became a Tendai novice monk by the name of Hannen. He then went to Mount Hiei, where he lived and studied and practiced as a Tendai priest for 20 years until he was 29 years old. It's said that he studied a great deal. He was a real student. I was not a real student compared to Shinran. He was amazing. He read virtually every sutra, every commentary that was available in Chinese, in the classic language of Chinese. He was a wonderful student, but he was also a practitioner. It said he was a doso, a hall priest, and according to some people, we believe he performed what's called the Jogyo Zammai practice, which was the constant walking and chanting practice. And so he was engaged in this very intensive practice throughout his time on Mount Hiei. But after 20 years of this practice and study, he realized that he was no closer to his goal of enlightenment that he had been when he first entered the mountain. In fact, he might have even been further away. And so, being the seeker he went on vigil to a temple in Kyoto called Rokkakudo when he was 29 years old. It was a 100-day vigil at this temple, which is said to have been built by and dedicated to Prince Shotoku, and it's believed that Prince Shotoku was a manifestation of Kannon Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva of compassion. And so he went there every day for this vigil, and it said on the dawn of the 95th day, he had a vision in a dream, a vision of Prince Shotoku. And through that vision, he realized that he needed to seek out his true teacher, Honen Shonin, who was now the leader of the Jodo Shinshu, the Nembutsu movement. And so he encountered his true teacher, Honen Shonin, at the age of 29, and he remained with his teacher until 1207, when he was 35 years old. The headquarters of Jodo Shinshu was in Yoshimizu, in the eastern mountains of Kyoto, and there Honen Shonin taught him the exclusive practice of the Nembutsu. Honen Shonin's movement was at high tide right now, but it was shortly after that it came into problems and conflict with the religious and the political and secular authorities of Japan at the time. And so there was a persecution, the Jogen religious persecution, which aimed to shut down and to end this teaching and this movement by Honen Shonin. And so in 1207, when Shinran was 35 years old, he and Honen and others were sent off in exile, and he was sent off in exile to Echigo province in the far northern regions by the Japan Sea. which was really the northern frontier of Japan at the time. He was defrocked and given a layperson's name, Fuji Yoshizane. He lived in a time, again, of great hardship, an isolated country, populated by people who were engaged in hunting and fishing and working the land. But in the same way as Shonin, his teacher, and the other disciples of Jodo Shu, Shinran Shonin saw this as an opportunity to deepen his own religious understanding and spread the Nembutsu teaching. And so there he declared himself neither monk nor layperson. He so hizoku, and he took the name Gutoku, foolish stubble-haired, as his name. When Shinran was in Echigo, he married. He married Eshinni-sama. Shinran was 39 at the time. Eshinni was about 30 years old. She was the daughter of Miyoshi Tamenori, a landowner in Echigo. And together, they lived a life of the devout lay Buddhist, the Shami sort of lifestyle. Said they had a number of children. The eldest was Zenran, and the youngest, as we all know, is Kakushinni. Shinran was pardoned in 1211, but he decided to stay in the northern regions with his family and decided to continue to live among the people there and propagate the Nembutsu. And so he engaged in a 20-year period of his life propagating the Nembutsu in northern Japan. This is one of these sort of images I pulled off of Google, so you can kind of see it's sort of it's a clockwise motion. Down at the bottom, there's Kyoto. So he was exiled up to Echigo in the upper part. And then you see moving down there, these are the northern regions where he spent a fair amount of time traveling about. And it's interesting that he brought his family with him. He took his family and his wife and his children. They moved around together to various places. They didn't have a permanent abode. They would stay in various people's homes or temples and other areas, and he would teach the Nembutsu to people in that area. And then they settled on this place you can see in the right-hand side, known then as Hitachi province, and they lived there for quite some time. And there he established many different Nembutsu practice halls, Nembutsu dojo, where people would listen to the teachings and say the Nembutsu and share their experiences of encountering Amida Buddha's primal vow. There he emphasized the fact that he was no different from his other Nembutsu followers. He often referred to the phrase Ondobo Ondogyo, fellow Nembutsu followers and practitioners, realizing all together are the same and one, identical within the heart of the Buddha, of Amida Buddha. It was during this time, and said that he wrote his major text, which we've referred to today. Reverend Imada, Reverend Shibata read passages from this work, the Jodo Shinshu. It said it took place in 1224 when he was 52 years old at the country retreat in Inada. I'll talk a little bit more about this in the future, but this is the date that we, in our tradition, point to as the establishment of Jodo Shinshu, because this is where we know he was writing this text. There's actually a reference to that date, 1224, in the text. And then he returned to Kyoto in around 1234 when he was 62 for perhaps a number of reasons. There was more conflict going on in the northern regions, but it's also possible that he wanted to go back to Kyoto to continue his studying and continue his writing. In Kyoto, he brought his family, but again, they had no permanent abode. But it was during this time he began to write even more extensively. So he wrote a number of things. And so from the final 16 years of his life, from the time from 1247 to 1263, he authored well over 16 texts. Now think about that. You're 75 years old, you've written your major work that probably took 20 years to write, and then he starts writing extensively. He wrote a number of different works, some interpretive notes and commentaries on the Jodo Shinshu teachings. He wrote hymns and poems, the wasan, in Chinese and Japanese. He wrote collections, he had collections of letters that he sent to his friends and fellow Nembutsu followers, shorter doctrinal writings in Japanese, and a number of other collections. So he was very, very prolific in writing, really astounding when you think about it. Shinran Shonin passed away on the 16th day of the 11th month, the 12th year of Kocho. In our tradition, we say that he passed away on January 16th, 1263. He was 90 years old, attended by his youngest daughter, Kakushini, a son Masukata, and several other disciples. He was cremated at the En-Ninji Temple and then enshrined at the Otani Mausoleum to the east of Kyoto. And there, his youngest daughter, Kakushini, was appointed as the first guardian of the shrine. And as I think we all know, that was the beginning of the Honganji as we know it today. So I want to get back to Kyogyo Shinsho because it's such an important text. It's really Shinran's principal text, his magnum opus. I just want to tell you a little bit that we use the name Kyogyo Shinsho. That wasn't actually the title of the text. The correct title of the text is Ken Jodo Shinjitsu Kyogyo Sho Monrui. You can see why we don't use that all the time. Kyogyo Shinsho, it just rolls off the tongue. The other one is much longer, and our tongues stumble over it. It means a collection of passages revealing the true teaching, practice, and realization of the Pure Land Way. The text is what's called a monrui, a collection of passages Shinran gathers from all these different sutras and commentaries in Chinese, but not only Pure Land sutras and commentaries, but general Mahayana and other sutras and commentaries, just a whole wide variety of them. He displays his ability to read and to understand them and to analyze them and to encapsulize them into this collection of passages, this monrui system. He also adds his own comments. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead, but that's okay. So it consists of 6 chapters, 2 prefaces, and a postscript. So one of the prefaces you heard today, and you heard passages from the postscript as well. And the text is written exclusively in Chinese. Shinran wrote the text perhaps for a number of reasons. It was his expression of gratitude to Shakyamuni Buddha and the Pure Land Masters. It was also his response and gratitude to Amida Buddha's benevolence. And it was, probably historically speaking, a defense and a clarification of Honen's teachings of the exclusive practice of the Nembutsu. Now, Honen became very popular with his teaching of exclusive practice of the Nembutsu. That means just say Namo Amida Butsu. That's all you need to do. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to have these great, profound understanding of states of mind. Just say Namo Amida Butsu. That's all there is to, that's all you need to do to bring about birth. And so this became not only an easy practice, but it was a simple one to understand. He attracted many people from all walks of life, and because of that, some of the Buddhist institutions became quite jealous. And over the course of time, there was a lot of criticism directed at Honen Shonin, his movement, but also his writings. And so Kyogyo Shinsho, it can be said, was Shinran's effort to clarify his teacher's writings, but also to defend his teacher from critics both within and outside of the Pure Land tradition. Okay, so again, according to our tradition, we point to the date of 1224, which will be 800 years ago next year, when Shinran was 51 years old, as the date of his composition of this text. And we do so because he makes a reference in the 6th chapter in which he says, the first year of our Gennin era, which corresponds to 1224, he's basically saying, this is the year we live in now, and this year we are 673 years into the last Dharma age. So that's his own words, he writes that. And so scholars have looked at that and said, okay, that's the year when he was writing the text. But we can also say that Shinran continued to work on the text. Again, he was a very good student, a really wonderful scholar, as I'll talk about in a little bit. But he apparently continued to work on the text, continued to look at it, to make revisions over the course of many years, which probably went on for another 20 or 23 years until around 1247, when he was 75 years old. So think about it. This is your major work. You've spent all this time working on it. You've written this wonderful text. People are now reading it. But he doesn't stop. He keeps going back to say, oh, let me fix this. Oh, let me address this. Oh, let me add this. So he did that continuously for another 23 years. Really amazing. There are a number of texts actually exist, and one that I'll show you some photos of today, if I have. Oh, I didn't. Okay, it's coming up. There's something called the Bando manuscript, which is actually a working manuscript that Shinran used. He probably worked on for well over 2 to 3 decades, and you can actually see it's written in his own hand. And in this Bando manuscript, he erases things, he grosses things out, he puts in other words. He's always making changes. It's really a fascinating document. I have an image of it later on. Okay, so. Okay, that's my IBS lecture portion of this talk, okay? I don't know how much time I have left, but like I said, I may take 50 years. What I want to get into now is probably the part of the talk that really means more to me, or means a lot to me, is just the question of the idea, this feeling, this statement of what Shinran Shonin means to me. And again, never had the privilege of meeting Shinran Shonin in person, but I've met him through his writings, and I've met him through the many, many people who have heard the Nembutsu, who have encountered the primal vow because of Shinran Shonin, because of so many others before us. And it's through their lives, through their understanding, through their hearts and minds, through their successes and failures, through all of the experiences they've had in life and that they've been able to share with me, that I've encountered Shinran Shonin. And I really feel that Shinran Shonin is perhaps one of the most important people that I've ever met in my life because of that. And I want to explain a little bit why. Okay. So, one is because he was a seeker of truth. Now just think about his life. He spent 20 years as a Tendai priest on Mount Hiei. And he did all sorts of things, very serious student, he practiced. These practices are really, really difficult, by the way. The one that we talked about is you're basically walking around, circumambulating a statue of Amida Buddha with your hands together saying Namo Amida Butsu for 90 days without stop. That's unheard of, right? That's the kind of practice he was engaged in. And so he did this with all sincerity, with great effort, with tremendous commitment, and yet he found he wasn't attaining what he thought he was attaining. He wasn't reaching his goal of enlightenment after 20 years. Now, Shinran could have given up. He could have just settled. He could have settled for being a sort of a washed up, bureaucratic, career-oriented monk. We know those kind of people in our everyday lives. I think we experience them in our own workplace or other places. Someone who's just sort of settled. This is all it's going to be. I'm just happy with this. I'm never going to reach my goal. I'm never going to get that position, but I'm good. And he could have done that. He could have settled, but he didn't. He refused to settle. He refused to give up his search for truth. And he didn't allow himself to be hindered by obstacles either within or outside of himself. And so he journeyed off the mountain. He went to Rokukakudo in Kyoto. There's some scholars who believe he went there every day, which means he commuted from the top of Mount Hiei down to Kyoto every day. That's a long way to go. Nowadays you can take a cable car or a bus. Even that's hard. But it said, and these scholars who know what they're talking about, they said he probably walked there every day, and then he came back at night. Amazing, right? But this is this kind of fervor that he had. This is the sense that he had in his heart that he needed to encounter what is true and real in life. He needed to live his true life. Okay. I remember long ago, thanks to Reverend Harada, he's one of the people that Reverend Harada introduced me to was Reverend Kubose of the Buddhist Temple of Chicago. And Kubose Sensei used to say, it's important that you live your true life. And what is that? It's the life you have to live, because if you can't live it, you will die. That's the kind of fervor, right? But that's what Shinran Shonin had. He was a seeker of truth, and he didn't settle. He didn't give up. That's what I admire about him. I also admire that he was a family man. and he was a good Dharma friend. Think about this. He was a seeker, but he also knew he wasn't seeking by himself or just for himself. He got married. He had a family. He had children, you know. It's possible, you know, when the conditions arose, the opportunity came about, he could have said, you know, I'm going to go off and I'm going to go by myself and I'm going to meet all these people in the northern regions. I'm going to teach them and I'm going to propagate the Nembutsu. You folks stay behind, okay? You got school, you got other things to tend to. You'll be okay. But he didn't do that. He brought his family with him. That couldn't have been an easy thing to do in medieval Japan. It's not like he can pack them up in a RV or a SUV or an old station wagon. That's my era. But, you know, it didn't work that way. They had to move across country. But they stayed together as a family, and I think that's extremely important. They lived a life of what's called the shami, the devout lay Buddhists, neither priest nor lay person, right? But he knew he had to do this with his family. He knew they had to be with him. They had to travel together. They had to experience this together. He also maintained friendships throughout his life. You can see in the letters he wrote after he returned to Kyoto, he continually wrote to his old friends. They caught up on, you know, their acquaintances. They talked about things they might have done, just like everyone does, right? When you're keeping up with your old friends. But they were important people to him. And when an old friend would pass away, he would lament that person's passing, and they would say, but I'm so joyful that so-and-so is going to realize birth in the Pure Land. And so this is the kind of person he was. And I think this is important for us to keep in mind. We always say that Jodo Shinshu is a family religion, and indeed it is. Because Shinran Shonin married, it really opened up the opportunities for the priesthood to marry, for us to be a family-oriented tradition, which we are. And I think that is the strength of Jodo Shinshu. Okay? To be able to come to the temple with your family, what's better than that? You know, to be a young child accompanied by parents and grandchildren, to be a grandparent accompanied by children and grandchildren. What's better than that? And we know that family is real. Family is a place where we really experience real life, the good and the bad, right? You know, you can't gloss over things going on within the family. And so what we experience with our family members, what we learn from our family relationships, is really the truth of who we are and the truth of life. Those relations that we have really are windows and doors to our own religious hearts. Because we understand that family is not just a convenience. Family is not just something that we happened upon because of genetics or social situation, but family is the bond that keeps us together, that gives us support, that makes us who we are, that gives us insight into ourselves and to the world. Family is more than just the people that we live our lives with, really. The family becomes the totality of life. Family flows within and through and under us. You know, it's this unlimited fabric of life. That's family. And family in that sense is also an expression of the boundless wisdom and compassion of the Buddhas. So this is why I think family is so important in the Jodo Shinshu tradition. We're extremely fortunate that we don't have to go off and sit on the floor all by ourselves. Can you imagine how that would be? Oh, boring. So family, and Shinran Shonin taught us that because he was a person of family and friends. He was also a tremendous scholar, and I mentioned this before. He's a brilliant scholar. You look at the work he does, it's incredible, to have studied all these sutras and all these commentaries. He was in the northern region. Where did he get these materials? That's an amazing thing to me. There were probably libraries in the urban areas, but he had to go seek them out. Or maybe when he left Kyoto, he might have packed up all these bags and boxes with him. That's what I think he did, and so it's incredible. And so he read them exhaustively. He knew them inside and out, and he really was able to probe into the very core of the meaning of these texts, of these sutras. It's really clear that his writings demonstrate he had a keen mind, an intellectual curiosity, an ability to draw from extensive resources and find the core of the Buddhist teachings and the significance are the primal vow. As I mentioned before, he continued to work on his major text, Jodo Shinshu, throughout his life. I think without question, he continued to revise it over and over again. So anyway, it's clear that Shinran was a brilliant scholar. But he was also a true teacher. And I think this is what also makes him important. He wasn't just a sort of ivory tower, sort of pointy head scholar who liked to live with his nose in a book. That's me, folks. Anyway, but he was a person who loved to teach. He was a wonderful teacher. There's a famous story in Tanisho, a record in Lament of Divergences, not written by Shinran, written by one of his followers by the name of Yuyen. And one of the sections of Tanisho tells a story in which Yuyen is having problems. He's saying, you know, according to the teachings, I'm supposed to really be joyful. I should really feel joy having said the Nembutsu and encountered the vow of Amida. I should feel joy. That's what all the writings say. But I don't feel any joy. And I should want to be born in the Pure Land right away, but I really don't want to die. And so Yuyen went to his teacher Shinran, he said, Master, why? What's wrong with me? Why don't I feel any joy? Why don't I feel anything? Why am I just satisfied with this life? I don't want to really journey to the Pure Land. What's wrong with me? And Shinran could have said, he was this great master by this time, he said, you're a lousy student. You're terrible. I quit you. Goodbye. You know, he could have said that. That's what some teachers would do. But he said, instead, I too have had this question, and the same thought occurs to you, Yuyen. That's amazing for a teacher to say that. I've had the same question, and it's not just an intellectual question. This is a real, live, heartfelt question. Why don't I feel joy? Why don't I feel anything? And Shinran said, I felt the same thing. And he also might be intimating, and I still do. This is still a struggle for me, and I want to sit down with you. And the English translation, which is from Collected Works Shinran, is wonderful. But what's better, I think, is the Japanese, because he says, I, Shinran, have had the same question. Shinran gives his name to his student, his follower, Yuyen. He gives him his name. And he joins together with Yuyen's name, saying, we are together in this. Let's sit down and let's study and let's reflect. That's the kind of teacher that is just wonderful. And, you know, I've had teachers like that, wonderful teachers. So has Reverend Harada. You know, I think of people like Reverend Kusada at IBS and Shigaragi Sensei in Japan. They learned so much, I'm sure, from Shinran, and they learned this way of being a teacher, of not holding themselves up over their students, but just getting down to our level, you know, asking the same questions, probing in the same way. That's a true teacher, and Shinran was indeed a true teacher, an inspiration for us all. And then, I think he was a rebel. I would say he was a rebel, he was a revolutionary in many ways. As he said, hence I am neither a monk nor a layperson, and for this reason I have taken the term toku, stubble-haired, as my name. Shinran Shonin, he rebelled. He rebelled from a number of things. One of the things he rebelled against was sort of this conventional way of thinking. People thought about the Buddhist path. I want to become a Buddha, so how do I do that? Well, I have to do this. I have to aspire for enlightenment. I need the Bodhi mind. I need the right circumstances. I need the right teacher. I need the right plan. I got to have a plan. And so we sit down, I make a plan. I figure this whole thing out. I'll start here, I'll do a little bit of this, I'll do a little bit of this, and I'll work my way up, and I've got the whole system worked out, the whole scheme devised in my head. And because of that, I'm going to reach my goal. That's this way of thinking, sort of traditional way. It all starts with me. I'm going to work it out. I've got the plan. I've got the ability. I've got what it takes. I'm going to read the teachings. I'm going to practice. I'm going to attain realization. And by the way, I'm going to reach my goal of enlightenment. That's the traditional scheme. And that's the way Buddhists have been approaching the path of Buddhism for centuries. But Shinran was a rebel. And what he did is he took a position that was 180 degrees opposite, sort of this, deeply revolutionary thinking when he said, enlightenment is not the goal. It's not the goal that we work so hard to reach, it's the source. Enlightenment is the ground. Enlightenment is the origin. That's where it all begins. And enlightenment, we might say, is wisdom unfolding as compassion. The wisdom of the Buddhas unfold as compassion in this life. And they reach out to beings who are not enlightened. They reach out to me. And they give me all of those crucial aspects of religious life: teaching, practice, shinjin, and realization. These are gifts from the Buddha, Jodo Shinshu. And so Shinran turned the whole scheme about, okay, realizing that this is, it's the working of other power. It's the primal vow of Amida Buddha. That's the source of the activity of enlightenment that reaches out to me and brings me to enlightenment. This is why he was a rebel. But he was also a rebel in a social sense too, as he says this: the emperor and his ministers acting against the Dharma and violating human rectitude, he goes on, became enraged and embittered. This is also from his major text, Jodo Shinshu, in the postscript. This is written by a person, a defrocked, exiled priest in medieval Japan, whose teacher had also been exiled, whose religious movement had been suppressed and oppressed. Some of his members had been killed. And this is a person now who's saying, the emperor and his ministers, they're acting against the Dharma. They're violating human morality. This cannot be. Now, think about this. This is medieval Japan. People didn't say things like that. They didn't write things like that. And so, of course, there would be a price to pay. But I think what we see here is Shinran had courage. He had the courage to stand up against the abuse of power by the religious, the political, and the secular authorities. He was neither monk nor layperson. He was able to break away from the bondage of the binary opposites imposed upon us by religious and political authorities. This is Shinran the rebel. This is Shinran the revolutionary. But there's more to him, and I'm taking more time than I'm supposed to. Sorry about that. I'll wind this up. Okay. He was also a true disciple of the Buddha. Okay. He says that a true disciple of the Buddha is a practicer who has realized the diamond-like heart and mind. This is Shinjin. A person of Shinjin is a true disciple of Buddha because without fail, that person will transcend and realize great nirvana. Okay. So I'd also like to talk a little bit about this, if I may, about some expressions or some passages or ideas that I've learned from people who I would consider to be true disciples of Buddha. And I'll try to get it done in short order, okay? The first is a poem by a very well-known poet by the name of Kobayashi Issa. He's a very favorite person. He was a Pure Land Buddhist as well, and he wrote a number of different poems, and he wrote this one. I'm going to go through it quickly. I'll just read it in English. A world of dew is a world of dew, and yet. Very simple poem, very easy to remember and memorize, but one of great profundity. Let me go through this really quickly about my way of thinking about this. A world of dew is an expression in Buddhism that represents or explains impermanence, that all things in life change. Everything goes through change, okay? And when we're going through Dharma school, or when we're people who encounter Buddhism in our adult years, this is one of the first things that we come upon, the teaching of change. Everything changes. And most of us say, I get that. I understand that. Buddhism makes sense. So a world of dew. But Issa goes on to say, a world of dew is a world of dew. And I think what he's saying here is, although I've learned about the law of change, I learned that everything is impermanent, I know that we will be separated from those we love. When the reality hits, it becomes real in a different sort of way. It's no longer this sort of intellectual idea, a world of do, oh yeah, everything changes. But when I lose someone I love, when I'm separated from those who mean a lot to me, then I realize it is a world of do. That's the way life is. We're separated from those we love. And there's nothing we can do about it. That's what Buddha was talking about 2,500 years ago. That's the reality that I'm living today. A world of do is a world of do. Then Isa, with clarity of mind, says, and yet someone who now understands intellectually that everything changes, and I also understand experientially everything changes, still I can't let go. Still I want to hang on. I know I'm not supposed to feel this way, but I can't let go. I can't let go of her. I can't let go of him. I want things to be the same. I can't let go. But the poem doesn't end there. Isa goes on to say, and yet, even this person who understands intellectually and experientially that all things must change and life is impermanent and fragile and fleeting, and yet I can't let go, even this person is taken in and held by the compassionate heart of the Buddha of unhindered light. I think it's a brilliant poem. And it's so simple that it's easy to understand, easy to remember, so please remember it. I'm going to skip over because I'm taking a lot of time here. Let me see. Let me get to the end here. Sorry about this. I timed it and it came in at 30 minutes, but obviously it's not. So I'm gonna skip ahead. Skip. Okay. So I thought about this because Reverend Candace read this passage, one of my favorite ones from Jodo Shinshu. I have a bit of a different version, but it's how joyful I am. My heart stands upon the Buddha ground of the universal vow. My thoughts flow in the inconceivable ocean of the Dharma. This comes at the end of his major text. It's one of those examples we see where Shinran is really expressing his profound gratitude to Shakyamuni Buddha and all the Pure Land and Buddhist masters, but also, most of all, to Amida Buddha for all the benefits that Amida Buddha provides to us. And I think this is a really an important and wonderful passage. I'd just like to reflect upon it, if I may. There's an old expression in Japanese. It goes like this: Jishin kaminari kaji oyaji. Anyone heard this before? Jishin, kaminari, kaji, oyaji. It means earthquakes, lightning, fires, and the old man. And these are four things, it says, and you grow up in Japan, these are four things that scare you to death. Things that we're afraid of, okay? So we'll talk about jishin in a little while, earthquakes. Certainly kaminari, lightning, it's frightening, you know, the first time you experience. Actually, living in the Bay Area, we don't get to experience lightning or thunder anymore. It just doesn't happen very often. In the Midwest where I grew up, it happens all the time. You're used to it. It's no big deal, but over in the Bay Area, very rare. So when it actually happened about a year or so ago, it really, we jumped out of our beds because it was just so crazy. So I can see where lightning would be a frightening thing. Certainly it is to kids and to dogs, no question. Kaji fires are a terrible thing. You know, we here in Northern California have experienced wildfires in Southern California as well. You know, it seemed like unending wildfires every year. This year, we're lucky to have escaped the bad ones. There are still some, but I think they're going to keep repeating. Wildfires are just a part of our lives because of our urban interface and climate change and droughts and everything like that. I think it's a part of our lives going forward. So fires are frightening things. We think about the horrible fires that occurred in Maui, the entire burning down of a town of Lahaina. Horrible, horrible things. And so, of course, it engenders great fear in us. But for me, earthquakes are something I just can't take. Because being in the Midwest, we don't experience earthquakes. Very, very rarely. In fact, I never lived through any earthquakes in Minnesota. But I've lived through a few over here. Nothing terrible. I mean, we were in Stockton when the Loma Prieta earthquake occurred. That was sort of the swaying of the house. But still, it's that feeling that the very earth you're standing on is no longer stable. There's a lot of things in life that are uncertain, and certainly we could have fires, we could have storms, we could have other sorts of disasters, we could have a war in the Middle East, which just started up. These things are happening all the time, but we kind of would like to rely on something. We'd like to rely at least on the ground we stand on, but if we can't even rely on that, if that starts giving way, then what do we have? And I can only imagine the feelings that people had in Japan in 2011 when the earth shook in the eastern Japan, and then the tsunami came in. What terror that would be. And so this world is filled with all sorts of unsettling things. Life is filled with uncertainty, as we talked about. It's fragile and it's fleeting, and there are scary things happening all the time. I think we can't deny that. But what's important is how we respond to them, how we respond to that uncertainty and all the scary things that define our lives. Because how we respond will determine who we are. Our lives aren't predetermined. Our lives are not predetermined by gods or fate or karma. Rather, the conditions in our life bring us face to face with challenges each and every day. And they also allow us to respond to those challenges in our own way. And so when we face challenges and difficulties and tragedy and hardship in life, we have choices. We have choices to respond. And the choices we make will define who we are. We can run away from hardship. We can run away from responsibility. We can live in denial or be paralyzed by fear. Or we can face the challenges in life. We can face all the scary things. And despite them, or even because of them, we can choose to live. The primal vow of Amida Buddha, as we learn from Shinran Shonin, that he encountered in his life and that he has passed on to us through the hearts and minds and lives of so many others. The primal vow of Amida Buddha, I believe, is life's deepest and most profound wish. I render it like this. It's a wish that we might live our true lives. The primal vow of Amida is the wish to live its true life, to become itself, to become its true self, and then to give itself to others so that they might live. I believe that's the nature of the primal vow of Amida Buddha. And so this vow the Buddha gives to us. Amida Buddha gives us this vow. And when we respond to that encounter with the vow, the way in which we decide to move will define who we are. The Buddha gives us this vow as encouragement. The Buddha gives us this vow encouraging us to live with courage and joy, and it provides us guidance in making choices in life. And so this is what I learned from Shinran Shonin. This is what Shinran Shonin means to me when he says, "How joyful I am, my heart stands upon the Buddha ground of the universal vow, my thoughts flow in the inconceivable ocean of the Dharma." These are the words of Shinran Shonin that he learned as he encountered this vow of Amida Buddha, this fundamental wish of life, encouraging us to choose to live. And I can only imagine him, just my imagination. He's in Echigo, having been exiled, turned away from the only life he knew, a defrocked priest, living in a place where let's face it, his studies didn't make him very marketable, not really marketable skills. And so he's standing at the edge of the ocean, before the roaring sea, and he's shouting out these words. He was now facing a life of exile, filled with uncertainty. The very ground upon which he stood was shaking beneath his feet. But facing his fears, he chose life. He chose to live his true life, for he found that he was standing firmly on the Buddha ground. I've taken too much time right now, so I'm just going to end my talk right now. But I just wanted to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts with you on this very special occasion. Shinran Shonin's encounter with Amida Buddha's primal vow changed his life. He entered a world of embrace and awakening, and he thereby sought to share that world with everyone else through his teachings, through his family, through his friendship, through his tradition. So Shinran's teachings have resonated now within the hearts and minds of Nembutsu followers for 800 years. His religious heart continues to guide us throughout this world into the world of embrace, where our lives will also be changed forever. This is what I've learned from Shinran Shonin through his writings, his ideas, his religious heart, as well as from the Nembutsu that is alive within the hearts of others. This is what Shinran Shonin means to me. Thank you very much. Please join me now in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandam, 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 Namandam. I'll finish this talk somewhere else, so I'll let you know. There's about another 7 years or something. So anyway, thank you very much.
Sensei, I think you could have really spoken a little longer if you wanted to. Yeah. My husband there is clapping. He loved it. He wants to hear the rest of it. No, thank you again to our guest speaker, Reverend David Matsumoto, president of the Institute of Buddhist Studies. That would be IBS. I know you folks want to stretch, and you will have your opportunity. Okay, it is always a treat when Reverend Yuki Sugihara picks up his guitar. And as he sets up, I want you to know you're an important part of this, so stretch, because you'll be standing and, no, actually, you know what? Why don't you just stretch in your seat, because Sensei says you don't have to stand. You can just sit and sing, right? But go ahead and stretch. He selected the Gatha Shinran Sama. In the purple service book in front of you, please turn to page 165. If you're reading in Japanese, it's the next page, 166, and there is a beautiful translation at the bottom of 166. Ooh, is that a preview of what's to come? I haven't finished introducing this, Reverend Yuki. I know, we have to end the service. Okay. The Gatha has 3 verses. Okay, you're going to sing the first 2 verses, then Sensei has his solo. Shh. And then the 3rd verse, you'll sing. All right, you don't have to stand. Okay, did you get that? First 2 verses, solo. 3rd verse, sit. I know you didn't rehearse this. You didn't rehearse a whole lot. You've been doing really great. And I know, because Northern California has talent, huh? Here is Reverend Yuki and Shinran Sama.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for making me feel like a professional musician.
Yeah. You can stand if you want. I love it when Reverend Yuki plays because he has such joy on his face, and can't you feel it? Ah, wonderful. Thank you again, Reverend Yuki. We have more music for you. I'd like to invite the members of the Sacramento Betsuin Choir to please gather up front. The Betsuin Choir has been singing for over 60 years. The choir was founded in 1962 and directed by the late Machiko Kimura. Reverend Yukawa back then, he was instrumental in getting folks to join. He helped organize singing tours to Buddhist temples in Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, and Southern California. In addition, the choir has performed at temples throughout our Northern California district. And this really is a family affair. Several families have had multiple generations sing in this choir. You might know the Miyamura family. They've had 3 generations of singers perform. The choir will perform 2 songs for you this morning. The first is Tabiyuki Shinran, followed by Shinshu Shuka. Please welcome the Sacramento Betsuin Choir under the direction of Karen Adachi and accompanied by Myra Okazaki on the piano. And thank you again to everyone in the Sacramento Betsuin Choir. On behalf of the Northern California Ministers Association, I want to thank all of you for joining us for this special service celebrating the 850th anniversary of the birth of our founder, Shinran Shonin, and the 800th anniversary of the founding of Jodo Shinshu. Of course, I want to thank our organist, Daniel Nishikawa. I want to thank Stuart Ito, who handled all of the technical aspects of this service. And we will close with a final meditation, this one written by Reverend Kyome Kubose from his book, Everyday Suchness. To Shinran, every day was the best day. No pretense, no false front was necessary. He was sincere and earnest in living himself as he was. We must unmask and be ourselves sincerely, earnestly, and live truly as we are. I think this teaching, continued Reverend Kubose, is Shinran's great contribution to us all. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. And now it's time for announcements, and I think we'll begin with Reverend Yuki.
We started the service time of good morning, and we're gonna end with good afternoon, probably. But yeah, thank you all for coming to today's special joint service. And your participation made the service really special, so thank you all for coming out. And on behalf of Northern California Ministers Association and Northern California District, I would like to thank everyone, especially Sacramento Betsuin, for providing the space for us, Northern California District Temples for the contributions for breakfast, beverages, and monetary donations, and for your help setting up and support. And we would like to express our sincere appreciation to Bishop Marvin Harada for coming all the way to participate from the farthest place, Anaheim, and Reverend Michael Endo for assisting the bishop, Reverend Dr. David Matsumoto for the wonderful message, and I want to hear the whole version of his talk, right? And then Sacramento Betsuin Choir for the beautiful musical offering. And many thanks to all of the incense offering representatives for participating today. And we would like to extend our gratitude to Sharon Ito for chairing the service, and Daniel Nishikawa for playing the organ, and Stuart Ito for the technical support. And we are truly grateful for all of the support we received to make this very special service possible. And you know, today we celebrated the 850th anniversary of our founder Shinran Shonin's birth, and 800th anniversary of the establishment of our school, Jodo Shinshu. And Shinran Shonin kept the spirit of Ondobo, Ondogyo, which was in Matsumoto Sensei's talk too, meaning, this is my translation, but companion of the Dharma, friends of the same practice. And because of the tremendous efforts and support of our predecessors, Jodo Shinshu became the Buddhist denomination who has the largest number of the followers in Japan. And Jodo Shinshu officially established overseas districts to Hawaii in 1897, and then to the mainland United States in 1899. And over the years, many temples were established in Hawaii and the mainland United States. And temple had been the center of people's lives. And occasions such as weddings and funerals were held at many temples, and temple have observed a lot of people's smiles and tears. So now, please think about it. What if this temple disappeared suddenly? So our friends in Lahaina, Maui, they experienced a devastating fire and lost everything. The minister there, Reverend Ai Hironaka, his family and he are physically okay, but they lost everything, such as wedding pictures, pictures of their children from childhood. The memories they have accumulated over the years are gone. Ex-Gomonshu Koshin Otani said something like this in one of his books. When we are in the happy occasion, we kept the spirit of Okage-sama de. We could be here today because of the efforts and sacrifices of so many others. And when someone is in hardship, we helped each other with the spirit of Otagai-sama de. We are on the same boat. So now, our companion of the Dharma, friends of the same practice of Lahaina, are in hardship. And as ex-Gomonshu said, we should keep the spirit of we are on the same boat in this difficult situation for the people in Lahaina. So in keeping with this spirit, the Northern California District Ministers Association and Northern California District Council decided to dedicate any donations received in observance of this service to support relief efforts in Maui. So for your convenience, we have envelopes ready to support the people in Lahaina. And whatever you can do to support them, we really appreciate your support in advance. So thank you for your consideration. I know it's past noon and you are hungry, and my stomach is growing. So I guess we should. I'm not the last person to make announcements. We have more announcements to come, okay? But I like to put my hands together with everybody and say the words before the meal. Because of the tremendous efforts and sacrifices of many lives, we are able to have this meal. So with gratitude and appreciation, we recite, "Itadakimasu, itadakimasu." Yeah, so you don't have to wait for 50 years.
Okay, lunch is only a few minutes away. Are there any other announcements?
Wow, I went to the temple this morning and a concert broke out. It was great. So I'm David Unruh from Placer Buddhist Temple, and I want to thank everybody from Sacramento for your assistance at our bazaar this year. How's that? Thank you for your assistance at our bazaar. We could not do it without you, literally. So normally this time of year, we're cruising into the holiday season and relaxing, but not this year. We have several activities coming up, and we want to welcome and invite you and encourage you to participate in all of them. Next Saturday, October 14th, is a wine tasting, and you do not have to be a wine drinker to participate. We actually have a two-tier prices this year for non-wine drinkers, and we also need drivers, sober drivers. Sunday, October 22nd, we are having a bus trip to the Jodo Shinshu Center for a service conducted by Reverend Harada, and I believe we're going to have some of his famous curry that same day. And afterwards, we are going to Grayton Casino in Santa Rosa. So we have a 56-seat bus, and we want to fill it up. And lastly, on Sunday, November 12th, we are having a luau following our Shotsuki service. The luau is in support of Lahaina, and we would encourage all of you to attend. All of these things are listed on our website if you want more information. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone here and afar. My name is Aaron Umura. I'm representing Cub Scouts Pack 50. We are returning our annual pancake breakfast next Sunday. So I know you may be hungry now, but hopefully you'll be hungry next Sunday as well, and be present here at the church. Today, if you are sticking around for lunch, please hold up your hand if you see a Cub Scout wearing their uniform, and hopefully you can support us. We're going to have our pancake breakfast next weekend from 8 to 11:30. All right, thank you very much.
Are there any other announcements? Well, to learn more about Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, please check out the Buddhist Churches of America website at buddhistchurchesofamerica.org and the Sacramento Buddhist Church website at buddhistchurch.org. And again, I want to thank you for being a part of today's special 850th, 800th joint service. Please join us again next Sunday. Our ushers will direct you to the Kaikan, the main hall, for refreshments and lunch. And you are welcome to offer incense to do Oshogo. Have a good morning, everybody. Thank you.